psychological benefit, as the questioner implies?
No, I don't think it has a positive psychological benefit. As to whether religious belief is a mental illness, I don't think it's fair to call it a mental illness because so many people actually do it. On the other hand, I think we could say that if you met one person, just one person, who claimed to believe some of the things that religious people as a whole claim to believe, you would think they were suffering from mental illness. It's just because so many of them believe it that we treat it as normal. But if you actually met somebody who said he believed that water could turn into wine, a man could walk on water, that a man could raise somebody else from the dead, you'd say, well, put him away. But because so many people believe it, you take it seriously.
Okay, I'm told we've got a question come in, a web question. It's from Cassandra Devine in Victoria. It's to Richard Dawkins. Why do you feel the need to express your views so stridently when they're not always welcome? Isn't it rather like going around to playgrounds and telling children that Santa Claus isn't real?
In modern English vocabulary, it's more or less impossible to use the word atheist without preceding it with the adjective strident. They simply go together. I am not strident. I'm no more strident than anybody else. Now, is it like disillusioning children about Santa Claus? The weird thing is that children manage to grow out of Santa Claus and suddenly...
Let's throw that to Jackie. And the questioner says that questioning faith might be a bad thing, might sort of cause people to stop believing in Santa Claus or whatever.
I think we have, as people of faith, we have an obligation to question and to continually be understanding and reinterpreting and trying to find meaning within our tradition. And I can say for myself that what I understand and believe about God now was not what I understood and believed about God when I was 10, and it's not what I understood when I was 5, and it won't be what I understand when I'm 90. I think that it's an evolving process to understand God and what God is and how God is in the world. And
here's the interesting thing. You keep reinterpreting God as you get older by the sound of it. Do you ever consider that perhaps God doesn't exist?
No, I don't, but there are those who do. And I think, for me, my faith in God is quite strong, but I think for many, many believers it's very... Of course you question the existence of God, and that sometimes you may come to the position that God doesn't exist, and all kinds of things can happen in your life and in the world and the way you view things. And there's an amazing Jewish philosopher who said the second you start to define God, you already limit God. God is understandable in some ways by humanity, and so the second we try and grapple with it, we're already limiting what God is. So I think that there's an unfolding understanding of God as you change and as the world changes, and all we can do as human beings is to approach it from where we are and from our understanding and what we know in that moment.
Before we come to our questioner down the front who had his hand up, Richard, do you regard that as just clever sophistry?
I was wondering what on earth it meant, I must say.
I prefer clever sophistry myself.
Okay, we did have a question down the front here, and I'm going to go to you. You had your hand up.
Yes, my question's for Professor Dawkins. Given that your previous role at Oxford University was about, propagating the knowledge of science to the public, which I think you've done excellently with, The Greatest Show on Earth, and also the BBC documentary that you did where you, expose the stupidity of homeopathy and so-called Eastern medicine. Don't you think it would have been prudent to stick on that sort of line as opposed to driving a wedge between religious people and science? I mean, in my opinion, what you've sort of done, probably inadvertently, is create a situation whereby people like Steve, who are actually in control of, whether our country has an emissions trading scheme, believing in climate change or not, have to question science over their faith. Wouldn't it be better to separate the two issues completely and just say, this is science, this is evidence, go out and make the best decisions that you can based on fact, and what you, believe in your own personal life should be completely separate?
It's a familiar line of argument, and I've met it often. I think that wasn't supposed to be put down. It's a genuinely difficult question. It's a question of political expediency. The implication of your question is that there's something about religion which is personal and which doesn't have any bearing, that evidence doesn't have any bearing upon it. Now, as a scientist, I care passionately about the truth. I think that the existence of a supreme being, a supernatural supreme being, is a scientific issue. Either there is a God or there isn't. Either there are gods or there are no gods. That is a...
Is that something really relevant for...
Yes, because it's a supremely important scientific question. If the universe was created by an intelligence, then we are looking at an entirely different kind of scientific theory from if the universe came into existence by natural means. If God or gods had something to do with the creation of life, then we're looking at a totally different kind of biology. So I think you can't just say religion and science have nothing to do with each other, science can get on, and you let people have their own religious... Of course, you let people believe whatever they like. But you cannot say that science and religion are completely separate, because religion makes scientific claims. It certainly makes scientific claims about miracles, as I mentioned before, and you cannot reconcile an authentic approach to science with a belief in miracles, or I suspect with a belief in supernatural creation. At least, the very least you should say is that this is a scientific question.
Okay, I know I'm sorry I'm going to interrupt you there because we've got lots of questions. You're watching Q&A. Remember, you can send us your web or video questions to our website. The address is on your screen. But our next question tonight comes from in the audience, and it's from Renee Brazier.
Professor Dawkins, you're clearly against the teaching of creationism in the context of the science classroom, but do you think there's any value in teaching religious studies in schools?
I won't start with you, if that's okay. I might go to Tony Bourke, first of all, for an answer to that, and I'll come back to you.
I think on the teaching of religious studies, there's a significant role there for parents as to whether or not they want that to be one of the things that's taught to their children. I agree with the comment that religious teaching does not belong in the science room. I do agree with that. But I also think that there's significant issues for parents. Some parents want their children to have a religious education. Some want their children to have a religious education that exposes them to a whole range of different faith belief systems. And some don't want to go there at all. And I actually reckon that's personal enough for parents to have a significant say in that.
Let's go to Julie Bishop, because I want to hear said from the three politicians before we go to the rest of the panel.
Tony, you might recall there was a debate earlier this year when it was suggested that the Bible should be taught in schools, and there was quite a controversy about it. I happen to believe that the Bible is one of the all-time bestsellers. That's a fact. And it is the basis of so much Western morality and thought and history and law and Western culture and literature. And it doesn't have to be taught in religious classes. It could be taught academically along with...
What about in science classes?
Well, along with the works of Shakespeare and the Iliad. But no, I believe that intelligent design is not something that would be taught in a science class. I mean, science, as far as I'm concerned, is the search for the natural causes of the universe, and that's what science should be about. We don't have intelligent design classes as such in Australia, as far as I'm aware, in the curriculum, but I think that it should be open to parents and open to schools to choose to offer religious instruction if that's what the schools and the parents wish to have.
Steve Fielding, they don't have it in many schools, but they do have it in the school associated with your church, where they do teach creationism. Waverley College.
Different schools teach different things. There's Jewish schools, there's Christian schools, there's all sorts of schools. Look, I actually think religion and science are separate. I don't think they should be taught in science, no.
I noted that I looked at the website of Waverley College. It has a slogan that says, "All your children will be taught by the Lord." What does that mean exactly?
Look, it may be that you've read more than I have, Tony, but look, at the end of the day, look, for example, I mean, my faith is personal. I don't think I've ever really come out and spoken about it. It's the media that have quizzed me more on it than I've actually gone out and actually spoken on it. In actual fact, I first met the Prime Minister when I was first elected, and it's funny, you know, he sat there, pulled out his Bible out of his top pocket and started to lecture me and give me a sermon. And I thought, that's interesting. I've never done that to anyone. Here's the Prime Minister, first meeting, never met the guy, pulls out his Bible. He's probably still got it in his top pocket, I think. But, look, it's not... I think it's very personal. And I think that, look, I've got my decision-making, my core decision-making team. I have a Jew and an atheist. I think you should be making policy on common sense and what is best for Australia. I don't think that, you know, Australians like the idea of having it driven by religion. And that is the truth, Tony. I've never raised the issue. It's very personal to me. I've never gone out and done what Kevin Rudd's done, meet someone for the first time, pull out the Bible and actually lecture them.
I'm going to interrupt you because once again we've got a web question on this subject. It's from David in Victoria. Do you believe intelligent design should be part of the science curriculum taught alongside evolution, or do you believe it is